In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where the mist clings to the peaks like a secret never meant to be told, a mystery unfolded that would haunt investigators, loved ones, and the world alike. But before the silence of the forest swallowed what was once a vibrant group of adventurers, there was a beginning, a place where dreams were born and promises of a journey of a lifetime were made. Our story begins with Emily Carter, a 32-year-old environmental scientist with a penchant for exploration and a heart that beat in sync with the wilderness. Emily was not just a scientist. She was a storyteller, sharing her journeys through the vivid lens of her camera and the eloquent strokes of her pen. Her online following, a testament to her adventurous spirit, watched with anticipation as she announced her next expedition into the Appalachian trails, a place she described as the soul of the earth. Emily was not alone in her pursuits. With her were three companions: Alex, a former military medic turned paramedic, known for his quick wit and even quicker smile; Sarah, a yoga instructor with a serene presence and the ability to find beauty in the simplest of moments; and Mark, an IT specialist whose technical prowess was matched only by his love for the great outdoors. Together, they were a diverse blend of skills and personalities, bound by an unyielding desire to connect with the world in its rawest form. Their journey was meticulously planned, each detail shared with their growing audience. From the gear they packed to the trails they intended to conquer, nothing was left to chance. The excitement was palpable, rippling through social media as followers eagerly awaited each update. Emily's last post, a photograph of the group standing beneath a canopy of ancient trees, was captioned, "The journey of a lifetime begins. See you on the other side." And then, silence. Days turned into weeks without a word. Concern grew into alarm as messages went unanswered, and the enthusiastic updates ceased abruptly. Family and friends, initially reassured by the group's survival skills, began to question the uncharacteristic quiet. It wasn't long before those closest to Emily and her companions began to fear the worst. The call came on a crisp autumn morning as the leaves painted the mountains in hues of gold and crimson. A hiker traversing a remote section of the trail stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. It was as if the group had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the remnants of their presence, a chilling stillness where laughter and stories once echoed. The 911 call was made, sparking the beginning of an investigation that would unravel the lives of those involved and ignite a search across the rugged terrain. As search and rescue teams mobilized, questions outpaced answers. Where had they gone? What had happened in those silent, foreboding woods? In the quiet aftermath of the call, the scene was set for a mystery that would grip the nation. A mystery that began with a journey of a lifetime and ended with a chilling, unanswered question. Where were Emily and her friends? Emily had always been the heart of her group of friends, a magnetic force drawing people together with her warmth and adventurous spirit. Growing up in the sprawling suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, Emily's life was a tapestry of vibrant experiences and close-knit relationships. She was the kind of person who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be, a place of endless possibilities and hidden wonders waiting to be discovered. Her passion for the outdoors was a defining trait, nurtured since childhood by summer camping trips with her family. This love for nature only intensified through her college years, where she met like-minded individuals, each with their own unique stories and strengths. There was Jake, a seasoned hiker with an encyclopedic knowledge of flora and fauna; Maria, an aspiring photographer whose lens captured the soul of every landscape; and Ben, a quiet but resourceful engineer whose meticulous planning ensured the group's safety. Their friendships were forged on trails and under star-filled skies, a camaraderie that seemed unbreakable. When Emily proposed the idea of documenting their journey of a lifetime through the Appalachian Mountains, it was an adventure none of them could resist. They planned meticulously, selecting routes that promised both challenge and breathtaking beauty. Their social media posts were filled with anticipation, a digital breadcrumb trail for those following their journey. But now, as the search teams combed through the dense underbrush and rugged terrain, the mystery of their disappearance loomed larger with each passing hour. The campsite, discovered by the unsuspecting hiker, was a tableau of unease, a half-eaten meal, a fire pit reduced to cold ashes, and backpacks arranged as if the group had intended to return at any moment. The initial investigation was a whirlwind of activity. Search and rescue teams deployed with urgency, establishing a command post at the trailhead. Helicopters circled overhead, their blades slicing through the autumn air, while volunteers trudged through the forest, calling out names that vanished into the whisper of leaves. As investigators pieced together the last known movements of the group, those who knew them best were left to grapple with an agonizing uncertainty. Emily's parents, resolute in their hope, clung to each other as they watched the search unfold on the evening news. Friends gathered, swapping theories and fears, their conversations punctuated by the haunting question, what could have gone so terribly wrong? The 911 call had set in motion an investigation that would peel back the layers of each hiker's life, revealing the complexities and secrets that had, until now, remained hidden beneath the surface. Every clue unearthed, every lead pursued, only deepened the mystery. The Appalachian wilds, once a symbol of adventure, now held the secrets of their fate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the mountains, a chilling realization took hold. Somewhere in those woods the truth lay buried, waiting for someone to find it. The day ended with no answers, only the echo of unanswered questions that hung in the air like the mist over the peaks. What had begun as a journey of dreams had become a race against time, a search for answers in a place where silence reigned. The sun rose on the second day of the search, casting a golden light over a landscape that had become a theater of tension and expectation. The first 48 hours were crucial, and the urgency was palpable in every step taken by the search teams. As the dawn mist lifted, the command post buzzed with activity. A hive of law enforcement officers, park rangers, and volunteers, all united in a singular purpose: to find the missing hikers. The local sheriff, a veteran of many searches in these hills, stood at the center of the operation, his eyes scanning a map spread across a makeshift table. He had seen the mountains take their toll before, but something about this case felt different, unsettling. His radio crackled with updates. No new sightings, no fresh clues, just the oppressive weight of unanswered questions. Inside a small tent nearby, Emily's parents waited, their faces etched with worry. The sheriff approached them, his voice calm but firm. "We're doing everything we can, we'll find them." Yet behind his words lurked the grim reality of the clock ticking away precious time. Key witnesses were quickly identified: the hiker who stumbled upon the campsite, a local shopkeeper who remembered the group buying supplies, and a park ranger who had seen them setting off on the trail. Their accounts painted a picture of a group filled with excitement and anticipation, unaware of the shadows that would soon envelop their path. Back at the campsite, investigators meticulously catalogued every item left behind. A notebook, its pages fluttering in the breeze, revealed plans for the journey, sketches of the route, and personal reflections filled with hope and wonderment. But no hint of distress, no indication of what lay in wait. As the hours slipped away, the investigation was already showing signs of strain. Communication mishaps led to overlapping search grids, wasting valuable time and resources. Critical areas were overlooked in the chaos, opportunities to uncover vital clues lost in the shuffle. The sheriff barked orders to his deputies, frustration mounting, but the damage was done. In the nearby town, news of the disappearance spread quickly. Friends and family members gathered at the local community center, a hub for those desperate for information, for answers. Candlelight vigils were held, prayers whispered into the night as hope mingled with fear. And then a revelation. A security camera from a gas station located miles from the trailhead captured footage of a group matching the hiker's description. Were they on the trail at all, or had they taken a detour? The footage raised more questions than it answered, casting doubt on the timeline and sending investigators down an unexpected path. As the second day drew to a close, the pressure weighed heavily on everyone involved. The initial mistakes, the missteps in those critical early hours, loomed large. The families, clinging to the thin thread of hope, found themselves grappling with the harsh reality that time was slipping away, and with it, the chances of finding their loved ones alive. In the dim light of the command post, the sheriff reviewed the day's findings, or lack thereof, his mind racing with possibilities. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the Appalachians, the truth was out there, elusive, just beyond reach. As he stared into the darkness, a single thought echoed in his mind. They had to find them, and soon, before the wilderness claimed them for good. With dawn came a renewed determination, a resolve to correct the course, to learn from the missteps, and to bring the hikers home. But as the sun rose on the third day, it brought with it a chilling new lead, one that would change everything. With the first rays of daylight creeping over the mountains, the atmosphere in the command post was tense, yet charged with a newfound urgency. The sheriff, weary but resolute, gathered his team to discuss the latest lead, a potential game-changer that had surfaced overnight. A local resident, a reclusive man known for his solitary hikes, had come forward with a curious account. He claimed to have seen the group in question not on the well-trodden trails, but deeper into the uncharted wilderness, veering off in a direction that few dared to explore. His story was met with skepticism. After all, this part of the forest was dense, and the risk of getting lost was high. Yet his detailed description of their gear and demeanor was too precise to ignore. The sheriff knew they couldn't afford another misstep. He dispatched a team to follow the lead, equipped with maps and radios, while at the same time ordered a review of the security footage from the gas station. The grainy video, although inconclusive, held potential clues: the timestamp, the direction the group seemed to be heading, and the vehicle they arrived in. Back at the community center, the families of the missing hikers were caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Desperation clashed with hope as they grasped for any news, any sign that their loved ones might still be alive. Volunteers, moved by the plight of the families, organized search parties and distributed flyers, each bearing the faces of the vanished hikers, their smiles frozen in time. But as the hours ticked by, the initial mistakes of the investigation loomed larger. Critical evidence, perhaps left behind at the trailhead, remained unexamined due to the chaotic start. Witnesses, potentially crucial to piecing together the timeline, had not been interviewed promptly, their memories now fading like echoes in the vast Appalachian expanse. The sheriff, aware of these oversights, was relentless in his pursuit of answers. He doubled down on efforts to track the hikers' digital footprints, social media posts, GPS data, anything that could pinpoint their last known movements. Yet as they sifted through the digital haze, a chilling realization began to take hold. The hikers' online presence had suddenly ceased, like a radio going silent in a storm. Meanwhile, local news channels buzzed with speculation, each report stirring the pot of public opinion. Questions about the group's intentions, the safety of the trails, and the competence of the search efforts swirled in the air, adding to the pressure on law enforcement. As the third day unfolded, the sheriff stood at a crossroads. The breakthrough, if it was to come, needed to happen soon. Every decision, every direction taken, felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss of uncertainty. And yet, as the sun began its descent once more, a sliver of hope emerged. Another eyewitness, one who might hold the key to unraveling the mystery, had just come forward with a story that promised to upend everything they thought they knew. In the dimming light of the third day, the sheriff gathered his team in the cramped confines of the makeshift command center. The air was thick with urgency, punctuated by the chatter of radios and the rustle of maps being unfurled. The new eyewitness, a seasoned hiker with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much, stood at the center of attention. His presence was a beacon of possibility, a fragile thread that could lead them to the truth. He recounted his tale with a voice etched by the wilderness. Just days before the disappearance, he had crossed paths with the group at a lesser-known trail intersection. They were vibrant, full of life, and speaking with excitement about a hidden waterfall, a local legend not marked on any map. His words painted a vivid picture, each detail a stroke on the canvas of their last known days. The sheriff, seizing on this new lead, dispatched search teams to scout the area around the rumored waterfall. But as they set out, a troubling realization surfaced. The initial search had been too focused on the well-trodden paths, neglecting the maze of offshoot trails that crisscrossed the region. A critical mistake, one that could have cost them precious time. Back at the community center, the families of the missing hikers clung to each other, their hopes like flickering candles in a storm. Each update from the police was a lifeline, yet the lack of concrete news gnawed at their souls. The initial police missteps were a bitter pill to swallow, fueling a sense of helplessness that threatened to overwhelm them. Meanwhile, the local media frenzy intensified. Reporters, hungry for any snippet of information, flocked to the scene, their questions sharp and relentless. The sheriff faced the cameras, his resolve unshaken, but the weight of his responsibility evident in the lines etched on his face. He promised transparency and vowed that no stone would be left unturned. Yet behind the scenes, the cracks in the investigation were widening. Key witnesses who had been at the trailhead on the day of the disappearance had not been interviewed promptly, their recollections now blurred by the passage of time. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station, potentially capturing the hikers' final preparations, had been overlooked in the initial chaos. As the clock ticked into the night, the sheriff grappled with the enormity of the task. The pressure to find the hikers was immense, but so was the need to correct the course of the investigation. The fear of leading the search down a dead-end path loomed large in his mind. Then, just as hope seemed to be slipping away, a breakthrough emerged from an unexpected quarter. A digital forensic expert, volunteering her expertise, uncovered a series of encrypted messages on one of the hikers' social media accounts. The messages hinted at a meeting with someone known only as the Guide, a figure shrouded in mystery and speculation. This revelation sent a ripple through the investigation. Who was the Guide? What role did they play in the hikers' disappearance? The answers to these questions held the potential to unravel the tangled web of the case. As the sun set on the fourth day, the sheriff knew the next steps were critical. With the new lead in hand, there was renewed hope, but also a heightened sense of urgency. The path forward was fraught with challenges, each decision a step into the unknown. Yet, in the hushed whispers of the forest and the unyielding determination of the search teams, there was a sense that the truth, elusive as a shadow, was within reach. The sheriff stared at the computer screen, the cryptic messages looming larger than life. The Guide, an enigma that now consumed the investigation. As the team worked to decrypt further communications, rumors began to swirl through the small Appalachian town. Whispers echoed in the coffee shops and on front porches. The town buzzed with speculation. Some said the Guide was a local, someone who knew the mountains better than anyone. Others believed it was an outsider, perhaps a transient who had drifted into town, weaving tall tales to lure the hikers into a trap. The first suspect emerged from these rumors, a reclusive man known to wander the trails, a self-styled outdoorsman with a history of run-ins with the law. His name was John Proctor, a name that seemed to fit the shadowy image of the Guide. Proctor lived in a cabin deep in the woods, rarely seen in town. His peculiar habits and solitary lifestyle made him an easy target for suspicion. The sheriff and his deputies were quick to track him down, eager to find a connection. The interrogation room was tense, filled with the weight of unspoken fears. Proctor, with his unkempt beard and piercing eyes, sat calmly, denying any knowledge of the hikers or their plans. "I'm not your man," he insisted, his voice steady, though tinged with a hint of defiance. "I don't know anything about any guide or any hikers. I'm just trying to live my life out there." Despite their efforts, the evidence was scant. His alibi, though thin, was corroborated by a few local residents who vouched for him, claiming he had been seen miles away from where the hikers disappeared. The sheriff was left with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, the townspeople grew restless. Fear began to seep into the community, a shadow that darkened even the brightest of days. Parents kept their children close, and hikers avoided the trails that had once been the pride of the town. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation hit a wall. Leads dried up and the initial fervor waned. The search for the guide proved elusive, and with no new evidence, the case began to slip from the forefront of the town's collective consciousness. The hikers' families, however, remained steadfast, their determination a beacon amidst the growing despair. In hushed conversations, some wondered if the hikers had simply chosen to disappear, leaving behind their lives for reasons unknown. Others speculated about more sinister forces at play. The lack of concrete answers only fueled the fire of speculation. As the first snows of winter dusted the Appalachian peaks, the case grew colder. Yet, amid the silence, a new development loomed on the horizon. A breakthrough hidden just beneath the surface waited to propel the investigation forward. A truth buried in the depths, ready to be unearthed. The chill of winter's breath swept through the town, whispering secrets the mountains had long held close. The investigation, once a blaze of urgency, now flickered like a candle struggling against the wind. The sheriff's office, once bustling with the energy of a fresh case, now felt the weight of stagnation. The walls of the investigation room bore witness to countless names scrawled across whiteboards, theories scribbled in haste, now fading into irrelevance. In this vacuum of progress, whispers began to fill the void. The town, desperate for answers, turned its gaze inward, scrutinizing each other with suspicion. Rumors spread like wildfire, each more fantastical than the last. A local recluse, known for his eccentric behavior and affinity for solitude, became the subject of many a whispered conversation. "He's always out there in the woods alone," one voice would say, eyes darting to ensure no one was listening. "Who knows what he's seen or done?" Despite the lack of evidence, the pressure to find anyone responsible was palpable. The sheriff, feeling the weight of the town's expectation, brought the recluse in for questioning. His appearance, wild and unkempt, seemed to fit the narrative of a man hiding dark secrets. Yet as the interview unfolded, it became clear that he was more a victim of circumstance than a perpetrator of crime. "I've lived here my whole life," he said, his voice a raspy echo of time spent in isolation. "The woods are my home, but I ain't seen nothing. Not those kids, not anyone." His words, though sincere, did little to quell the suspicions that had taken root in the townsfolk's minds. The sheriff released him, lacking any real cause to hold him, but the damage was done. The town's unease had found a new focus, and the recluse retreated further into the forest, away from prying eyes and whispered judgments. As the investigation floundered, the families of the missing hikers clung to hope with a tenacity that defied the growing despair. They organized their own searches, combing through records, reaching out to anyone who might have seen something, heard something, anything that could provide a clue. In this atmosphere of uncertainty, a new lead, fragile as an autumn leaf, emerged. A local man known for his expertise in the region's trails came forward with a story that seemed almost too coincidental. He spoke of a chance encounter with a group of hikers several weeks before their disappearance. He described them with an uncanny accuracy, down to the vibrant bandana one of the hikers had worn. "I saw them heading towards the old trail," he said, his eyes distant as if recalling a distant memory. "They seemed eager, like they were chasing something, or being chased." His account, though intriguing, was met with skepticism. The old trail, long abandoned and fraught with danger, was a place of legends and lore, not reality. Yet the man's conviction planted a seed of doubt, a glimmer of possibility, that perhaps the answer lay not in the town, but in the forgotten paths of the mountains. With this new fragment of information, the investigation found a faint pulse. The sheriff, driven by a need to find resolution, began to consider the possibility that the hikers' journey of a lifetime had taken them down a path from which there was no return. But as the snow deepened, covering the trails in a silent shroud, the question remained: what had they been chasing, or what had been chasing them? The sheriff, standing at the edge of the forgotten trail, felt the weight of the community's hope pressing against him like the cold mountain air. As he peered down the shadowy path, swallowed by dense forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that the truth lay buried beneath layers of myth and nature's indifference. Back in town, the rumor mill churned with relentless fervor. Whispers of a cult, hidden deep within the Appalachians, began circulating among the townsfolk. Some claimed to have seen strange symbols carved into trees along the old trail, while others spoke of eerie lights flickering in the forest at night. It was a narrative that fed on fear and the unknown, but it lacked the solid ground needed to move the investigation forward. The sheriff, though tempted by these tales, knew better than to chase shadows. Still, he couldn't ignore the growing tension, the way the community seemed to turn inward, suspicion blossoming like weeds between neighbors. And so he continued to follow the thin thread of the hiker's last known movements, even as it led him deeper into uncertainty. With each day, the case grew colder. The media, once fervently interested, began to lose interest, their coverage dwindling to occasional updates. The families of the missing hikers, however, refused to let the public forget. They held vigils, their candles flickering defiantly against the encroaching darkness, their voices steady with resolve as they called for justice and answers. In the midst of this stagnation, the sheriff turned his attention to an unlikely suspect, a newcomer to town, a man who had arrived shortly before the hiker's disappearance. His presence had gone unnoticed, a shadow among shadows, until a local shopkeeper mentioned his erratic behavior and peculiar questions about the mountains. The sheriff approached the man, his demeanor calm yet probing, seeking any hint of connection to the vanished hikers. The man, nervous and evasive, spoke in riddles, his words weaving a tapestry of half-truths and speculation. He claimed to have seen the hikers, his descriptions eerily accurate, but his story lacked coherence, a patchwork of imagination and reality. Despite the sheriff's efforts, the investigation stalled. Leads evaporated like morning mist, and the suspect's alibi, though flimsy, held just enough weight to prevent further scrutiny. The townspeople, restless and frustrated, returned to their lives, their hopes splintered but not broken. As winter tightened its grip on the mountains, the sheriff found himself standing at the trailhead once more, the path a blank slate beneath the snow. He knew the search could not continue indefinitely, that resources were finite and patience even more so. Yet a quiet resolve anchored him, a belief that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, would eventually surface. With a heavy heart, he turned away from the trail, the echoes of the hiker's laughter, a distant memory, carried on the wind. The case for now seemed destined to join the ranks of unsolved mysteries, a story unfinished and untold. But in the quiet moments, as he sifted through the fragments of what once was, he held on to the hope that one day the mountains would reveal their secrets. As the sheriff walked back to town, the question lingered: who or what had crossed paths with the hikers on that fateful journey? Years drifted by like fallen leaves carried downstream, the once vibrant memory of the missing hikers slowly fading in the community's collective consciousness. The townspeople, who had once gathered in hopeful vigils and whispered theories in hushed tones, gradually resumed their daily routines. New stories emerged, new dramas unfolded, but for the families of the vanished, time stood still. In the quiet kitchen of a modest home, Pamela, the mother of one of the hikers, sat at the table, her eyes scanning the well-worn pages of a scrapbook. Each photograph and news clipping a testament to her relentless pursuit of answers. Her daughter's bright smile beamed up from the pages, a haunting reminder of the life that had been so abruptly interrupted. Pamela's heart ached, with an intensity that had not dulled over the years. Her husband's hand rested on her shoulder, a silent promise of unwavering support. Their private investigation had led them down countless paths, each more convoluted than the last. They had hired private detectives, scoured online forums, and even ventured into the mountains themselves, driven by a desperate need to uncover any shred of evidence the official search might have missed. But the trails were cold, and the mountains indifferent. The silence from the authorities was deafening, a void that threatened to swallow their hope whole. Across town, the sheriff still carried the weight of the unsolved case, a burden that gnawed at him during quiet moments. The newcomer, once a figure of suspicion, had long since vanished, leaving behind only questions and a lingering unease. The sheriff's office had moved on to more pressing matters, new crimes and new victims demanding their attention. Yet in the solitude of his office, the sheriff often found himself revisiting the hikers' case files, hoping for a revelation that never came. Meanwhile, the community's initial shock had softened into a resigned acceptance. The local diner, once a hub of whispered speculation, buzzed with the mundane chatter of everyday life. The hiker's disappearance, while still mentioned on occasion, had become a tale of caution, a ghost story told to newcomers and tourists. The mountains stood as they always had, majestic and unmoved, their secrets well guarded beneath layers of rock and canopy. Pamela and her husband refused to let the case gather dust. They organized annual memorial hikes, each trek a symbol of their enduring love and hope. Fellow hikers, friends, and even strangers joined them, united in solidarity and remembrance. These gatherings were bittersweet, a mix of camaraderie and sorrow, but they served as a reminder that the hikers' spirits had not been forgotten. One particularly cold morning, as Pamela prepared for the annual hike, she received a letter. The envelope was plain, the handwriting unfamiliar, inside a single sheet of paper with a cryptic message, "The mountains remember." Her heart raced. Was this another cruel prank or a genuine lead? She shared the letter with her husband, their minds racing with possibilities. Could this be the breakthrough they had been waiting for? The message, though vague, reignited a flicker of hope, a belief that the truth might finally be within reach. The sheriff, too, received a similar letter, prompting him to reopen the case files with renewed vigor. The community, upon hearing the news, buzzed with anticipation and apprehension. What did the mountains know, and who had chosen this moment to break the silence? As the town braced for what lay ahead, the question hung in the air, heavy with promise and uncertainty. Was the long silence finally coming to an end? The years had not been kind, eroding hope like the relentless Appalachian rain that carved paths into the mountainside. Pamela's face bore the lines of sleepless nights and unanswered prayers, each wrinkle a testament to the passage of time without her daughter. Her husband, once a man of vibrant energy, now moved with the weary gait of someone carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, had become a shrine of sorts, every corner echoing with memories of the hikers' vibrant spirits. The letter, simple yet profound, stirred something deep within them. It was as if the mountains themselves had whispered a secret, a truth buried beneath years of silence. Pamela clutched the letter as if it were a lifeline, a tangible connection to a past that refused to fade. The community, too, felt the shift. The annual memorial hikes grew in number, drawing not just locals but people from neighboring towns, all captivated by the mystery and the promise of resolution. The hiker's story, once a cautionary tale, became a legend, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Pamela and her husband channeled their grief into action. They hired a private investigator, a seasoned professional with a reputation for solving the unsolvable. He combed through the case files with meticulous care, his eyes scanning the pages for anything that might have been overlooked. Every clue, every testimony was re-examined under the harsh light of hindsight. The investigator found himself drawn to the hikers' social media posts, particularly their last entries. The journey of a lifetime they had anticipated seemed to hold a deeper meaning, a sense of foreboding that only now seemed apparent. He reached out to tech experts, hoping to uncover digital breadcrumbs that might lead them closer to the truth. Meanwhile, the sheriff's department, galvanized by the mysterious letter, reopened the case with a renewed sense of purpose. Deputies revisited old witnesses, their questions probing deeper, seeking the slivers of truth that might have been missed in the initial investigation. The mountain trails, once silent, now echoed with the footsteps of search teams, their determination unwavering. As days turned to weeks, the town found itself at the center of a media storm. Journalists descended, hungry for the story that had eluded capture for so long. News vans lined the streets, satellite dishes pointed skyward, each broadcast promising revelations that remained tantalizingly out of reach. For Pamela, the media attention was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brought the case back into the public eye, ensuring that no stone would be left unturned. On the other, it opened old wounds, each headline a reminder of the void that could never be filled. Yet amidst the chaos, there was a sense of momentum, a feeling that the long silence was indeed fracturing. The letter had been a catalyst, setting in motion a chain of events that could not be undone. The mountains, it seemed, were ready to speak, and the world was listening with bated breath. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Pamela stood at the edge of the forest. The mountains loomed before her, majestic and unyielding, their secrets hidden in shadows and whispers. She closed her eyes, her heart a medley of hope and fear. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, its cry echoing across the valley, a lone voice in the wilderness. The question remained as haunting as ever. What did the mountains remember, and were they finally ready to share their tale? The sun had set, casting the town into a quiet lull that belied the intense activity just beneath its surface. For Pamela, that moment by the forest's edge was both an ending and a beginning. It was the end of a day that had brought her closer to answers, yet it also marked the start of another grueling chapter in her lifelong quest for closure. The media frenzy gradually subsided, the news vans packed up, and the journalists moved on to fresher stories. The spotlight that had briefly illuminated the case began to dim, leaving behind only the cold glare of unresolved questions. For the residents of the small Appalachian town, life slowly returned to its mundane rhythm, the mystery of the vanished hikers fading into local legend, whispered about in the corners of the town diner and during late-night campfire stories. Yet for the families of the missing, the silence was deafening. Years stretched into decades, and the absence of their loved ones became a part of their everyday existence, a shadow that lingered over birthdays and holidays, casting a pall over moments that should have been joyful. Pamela, ever resilient, refused to let the case gather dust. She became her own detective, poring over the case files every night. She meticulously documented every lead, no matter how insignificant it seemed. Her walls were covered with maps, timelines, and photographs, an intricate web of connections that only she could decipher. Each line drawn was an act of defiance against the oblivion that threatened to swallow the truth whole. In those years of silence, Pamela found allies in unexpected places. A retired detective, haunted by the unsolved case, joined her crusade, offering insights and strategies that only a seasoned investigator could provide. A local historian, intrigued by the tale, began to dig through archives, searching for patterns in the landscape's past that might offer clues. Together, they formed an unlikely team, united by a shared determination to uncover what lay hidden beneath the moss-covered stones of the Appalachian trails. The town, meanwhile, began to move on. New families moved in, unaware of the tragedy that had once gripped their community. The hiking trails became popular again, yet a sense of unease lingered. The mountains, majestic and indifferent, stood as silent sentinels, their secrets still buried deep within. Pamela's private investigation often led her to confront a painful truth. Every door she knocked on, every cold call she made, was a reminder that time was slipping away. Witnesses aged, memories faded, and evidence deteriorated. Yet she pressed on, fueled by a fierce love and a burning need for answers. One particularly cold winter evening, as snowflakes danced against her window, Pamela received a call that would reignite her hope. It was the historian, breathless with excitement. He had stumbled upon an old newspaper clipping, a seemingly innocuous report about a sighting in the mountains around the time of the hiker's disappearance. The details were vague, but there was something about the way the witness described the event that sent shivers down Pamela's spine. As she jotted down every word, the historian's voice trembled with a mix of fear and anticipation. Could this be the lead they had been waiting for? Was this the crack in the silence that might finally let the truth seep through? The question hung in the air, as fragile and hopeful as the first light of dawn. Pamela clutched the phone, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. The historian's discovery was a flicker of light in the oppressive darkness that had shrouded her life for so long. She quickly arranged a meeting, her mind racing with possibilities. Could this be the key to unraveling the mystery that had haunted her for years? The following day, the historian arrived at Pamela's modest home, a stack of yellowed newspapers clutched in his arms. His eyes shone with the fervor of someone who had uncovered a hidden piece of history. As he laid out the clippings on Pamela's kitchen table, she leaned in, her eyes scanning the faded ink with urgency. The article was dated 2 weeks after the hiking group vanished. It described a local farmer's account of seeing unfamiliar figures moving through the woods at dusk, their silhouettes barely discernible against the twilight. At the time, the sighting was dismissed as inconsequential, a mere footnote in the larger narrative of the missing hikers. But Pamela and the historian, fueled by renewed determination, saw something more. They combed through the archives, piecing together fragments of information. The farmer had since passed away, but his grandson, now an elderly man himself, still lived in the area. Pamela knew she had to speak with him to see if he remembered any more details about that fateful evening. With the historian by her side, she drove to the outskirts of town, the landscape a patchwork of snow-draped fields and skeletal trees. The grandson, a man with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor, welcomed them into his home. As they settled in his cozy living room, Pamela's voice trembled with both anticipation and trepidation. The old man closed his eyes for a moment, drawing on the recesses of his memory. He recounted how his grandfather had spoken of strange lights in the woods, flickering like will-o'-the-wisps. He remembered tales of whispered voices carried on the wind, but nothing more concrete. Pamela's heart sank, but she refused to let despair take hold. As they left, the historian mused aloud about the significance of the lights. It was a threadbare lead, but Pamela grasped it tightly. She began to wonder if the lights were connected to something deeper, a hidden network of caves, perhaps, or an old forgotten trail that only the locals knew. The years of silence had taken their toll. The families of the missing hikers had grown weary, their once hopeful eyes now clouded with resignation. The community, too, had begun to forget, the tragedy slowly fading into the background of everyday life. Pamela understood the burden of time all too well. She had watched as friends and neighbors moved on, watched as the seasons changed, leaving her trapped in an endless winter of grief. Yet, she remained steadfast, her resolve unbroken. As she drove back home, Pamela felt a renewed sense of purpose. The historian's discovery was a small crack in the silence, a chance to breathe life into the cold case. She vowed to follow every lead, no matter how tenuous, until the truth was finally unearthed. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, hope glimmered on the horizon, as fragile and resilient as the dawn breaking over the Appalachian peaks. Pamela's resolve was like steel, and the following morning brought with it a new determination. She pored over her notes, cross-referencing every possible lead with the historian's whispers of hidden paths and mysterious lights. She needed more than folklore. She needed facts, something tangible to unravel the enigma that had haunted them for so long. Meanwhile, in a bustling city office, Detective Marcus Halloway sifted through a mountain of paperwork. The cold case had landed on his desk just days ago, a file as thick as an Appalachian forest. He had a reputation for solving the unsolvable, a modern-day Sherlock with a penchant for detail. The case intrigued him, a challenge that called to his instinct for justice. His attention was particularly drawn to a small overlooked detail, a scrap of fabric discovered near one of the last known locations of the hiking group. It had been dismissed as inconclusive, but Marcus saw potential. Advances in forensic technology had opened new doors, and he thought of genetic genealogy, a tool that had cracked open the silence of many bygone mysteries. Marcus picked up the phone, dialing the number of a trusted forensic genealogist. They spoke in hushed tones about the possibilities, about breathing new life into forgotten evidence. It was a long shot, but if they could extract viable DNA from the fabric, it might lead them to a suspect or even provide a connection that had been invisible before. Pamela, unaware of Marcus's burgeoning investigation, continued her own relentless pursuit. She reached out to locals, delving deeper into the tales of the strange lights. Her inquiries led her to an elderly woman who spoke of the old mining tunnels that crisscrossed the area. The woman's eyes twinkled with stories of secret passages and hidden places, long abandoned and forgotten by time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the mountains, Pamela felt the weight of time pressing down. Yet the pieces were beginning to connect, like stars forming constellations in the inky night sky. She felt closer than ever to the truth, but the path was still shrouded in mystery. On the other side of the state, Marcus's phone rang. The forensic genealogist had news, promising news. The fabric had yielded a DNA sequence, and they were running it through databases, hoping for a match. Marcus's heart raced with the thrill of the chase, the potential for a breakthrough palpable in the air. The clock ticked on, each second a reminder of how long the families had waited, how long the truth had remained buried beneath layers of secrecy and time. But now, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance that the next call could change everything. As Pamela settled in for the night, Her phone buzzed with a message that would set her on a collision course with the new investigation. The journey of a lifetime that had ended in silence might finally be ready to speak, the echoes of the past louder than ever before. Pamela's fingers trembled as she read the message. It was from Marcus, cryptic, yet charged with urgency. "We need to talk. I have something big." She knew Marcus well enough to understand that he wouldn't reach out unless there was something substantial on the horizon. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Marcus, meanwhile, was pacing his cluttered office, the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The genealogist had confirmed what he dared not believe. A familial DNA match had been found. It wasn't a direct hit, but it was close enough to open new doors, to pull back the curtain that had kept them in the dark for so long. He recalled the conversation vividly. "The DNA points to a family line that's been in the area for generations," the genealogist had explained. "We're talking deep Appalachian roots. It's a start, but we'll need to dig deeper." Pamela's arrival was a whirlwind of hurried greetings and shared tension. She could see the determination etched in Marcus's features, a look that mirrored her own resolve. They settled into a corner of his office, surrounded by stacks of case files and maps dotted with notes. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. "We've got a lead, Pam. A real lead. DNA from the fabric matched with a family that's lived in these parts for centuries. It's not a direct suspect, but it's our best shot yet." Pamela's mind raced, connecting dots with the fervor of someone who had spent too long in the shadows. "The mining tunnels," she mused aloud. "What if those tunnels were used as a hideout, a place only known to locals, passed down through family lore?" Marcus nodded, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "Exactly. If this family has been here for generations, they might know every inch of this land, including those tunnels." The pieces were aligning, a puzzle long forgotten now revealing its corners. But there was more work to be done, more questions to answer. Who among this family could be involved? What were their motives? The DNA was a thread, but it needed to be pulled carefully, lest the entire tapestry unraveled too quickly. Their conversation was interrupted by another call, this time from the local police chief, whose interest had been piqued by the renewed focus on the case. "I've assigned a new detective to help," the chief announced, his voice steady. "Detective Harper. She's got a sharp mind and a fresh perspective. I think she'll be an asset." As Pamela and Marcus exchanged glances, a sense of cautious optimism filled the room. The inclusion of Detective Harper was unexpected, yet welcomed. A new player in their game, someone who might see what they had missed or who could lend strength to their theories. Outside, the sky was a deep midnight blue, the stars whispering secrets of their own. And as Pamela and Marcus prepared to meet this new ally, they couldn't help but feel that the journey, a journey that had once seemed so hopeless, was finally finding direction. In the distance, the mountains loomed, silent witnesses to the secrets they held within. But for the first time in years, those secrets were beginning to stir, ready to be spoken into the light of day. The morning air was crisp as Pamela and Marcus made their way to the small, rustic police station nestled at the base of the Appalachian foothills. The quiet hum of the town seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if it too sensed the shift in momentum that Detective Harper's arrival promised. Inside, the scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint mustiness of old case files. Detective Harper stood by a cluttered desk, her presence both commanding and approachable. Her eyes, sharp yet kind, met theirs with a mixture of curiosity and determination. "Thank you for meeting with us," Pamela began, her voice steady but tinged with hope. "We believe there's more to this case than what's been uncovered." Harper nodded, her expression thoughtful as she gestured for them to sit. "I've been reviewing the files," she said, her voice measured but firm. "And I think you're onto something. The tunnels, the family's history here, it all aligns with some new information we've received." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. "What new information?" Harper pulled out a file, sliding it across the table. "A few weeks ago, we received a tip, an anonymous letter. It mentioned a name, someone who was overlooked in the initial investigation, a local who vanished around the same time as your group." Pamela's heart quickened. "Who?" Harper hesitated, as if weighing the gravity of what she was about to reveal. "Alan Granger," she said finally. "He worked at the local mine. His disappearance was never linked to your group, but the timing, it's too coincidental." Marcus frowned, recalling the old mining maps they'd scoured. "And you think this Granger might have used the tunnels?" Harper nodded. "Possibly, but there's more. The letter mentioned something called the family secret. It could be a reference to those tunnels, or perhaps something more sinister." Pamela exchanged a glance with Marcus, her mind racing. "This secret, could it be connected to the DNA we found?" Harper leaned back, thoughtful. "That's where things get interesting. There's a new technology, genetic genealogy. We've been using it to solve cold cases by connecting DNA to distant relatives. If we have a sample from the crime scene, we might be able to trace it back to someone in Granger's family." The room fell silent as the weight of possibility settled over them. Decades of silence were finally giving way to the soft murmurs of truth. "But," Harper continued, her voice cutting through the quiet, "we need to move quickly. If the letter is accurate, someone might not want this secret uncovered." Pamela nodded, determination sparking in her eyes. "Then we need to find that sample and run it through the database. It's our best shot at unraveling this." As they left the station, the sun broke over the horizon, casting long shadows on the ground. The mountains loomed large, their secrets beginning to unfurl under the probing light of a new day. And with each step, Pamela felt the weight of years lifting, replaced by the fragile, exhilarating promise of discovery. The morning air was crisp, charged with the urgency of newfound hope. Pamela and Marcus moved with purpose, their footsteps echoing against the cobblestone path that led them back to the station's cold case archives. Here, amidst the dust and forgotten files, lay the key to unlocking a mystery that had haunted them for years. Pamela's fingers worked deftly, sorting through the yellowed pages until she found the folder marked with the group's case number. Her heart skipped a beat as she pulled out the evidence log, her mind racing back to the day they'd first combed through these same documents. "We've got to find that DNA sample," Marcus said, his voice a low, urgent whisper. Pamela nodded, her eyes scanning the log. There it was, a reference to a swab taken from a hiking boot found near the scene. It had been considered inconclusive back then, a dead end in a case full of them. But now, with the promise of genetic genealogy, it could be their lifeline. "Here," she said, pointing to the entry. "This is what we need." The lab buzzed with a quiet intensity, technicians moving with practiced precision. Pamela and Marcus watched as the evidence was prepared, the sample carefully extracted, and run through the state-of-the-art DNA sequencer. Time seemed to stretch, each second laden with anticipation. Finally, a technician approached, her face a mix of professionalism and barely contained excitement. "We have a match," she announced, her voice breaking the tension in the room. "Not a direct hit, but close enough to trace a familial connection." Pamela's heart raced. "Who is it linked to?" The technician hesitated, consulting her notes. "The DNA matches with descendants of the Granger family. Alan Granger's second cousin, to be exact. It seems the family secret might be more than just a rumor." Marcus leaned in, his brow furrowed. "What about Alan himself? Does the match indicate he could be involved?" The technician shook her head. "The DNA isn't a direct match for Alan, but it places someone in his family at the scene. We need more information to pinpoint exactly who." Pamela felt a mixture of relief and frustration. They were close, but the answers still eluded them. "We need to dig into the Granger family history," she said, determination hardening her voice. "There must be something there that connects all of this." Marcus agreed. "We should also look into the tunnels. If Alan was using them, or if they were part of this family secret, it might explain how someone moved around undetected." As they left the lab, the magnitude of the task ahead loomed large. Yet, beneath the weight of the years, a flicker of hope burned brighter than ever. They were on the verge of uncovering the truth, and with each step, the mountains seemed to whisper their secrets, urging them onward. The journey had taken a new turn, and as they delved deeper into the past, the shadowy figure of the killer in plain sight began to take shape, waiting to be revealed. As Pamela and Marcus delved deeper into the Granger family history, They found themselves immersed in a tapestry of secrets and whispers that had long been buried beneath the Appalachian soil. Each piece of the puzzle was a thread, weaving a narrative as intricate as it was ominous. Pamela's office became a war room, walls lined with photographs, documents, and a sprawling family tree that traced the Granger lineage. She and Marcus worked tirelessly, combing through birth records, marriage certificates, and obituaries, searching for any anomaly that might point them in the right direction. Then, a breakthrough. Pamela noticed a name that had been mentioned in passing during their interviews, a reclusive cousin, Henry Granger, who had lived on the fringes of the family. He had always been described as odd and distant, a man who preferred the solitude of the mountains to the company of others. Marcus raised an eyebrow as he read the notes aloud. Henry Granger, barely mentioned in any of the family gatherings or records. It's like he was a ghost among them. Pamela nodded. And ghosts can move unnoticed. If Henry had access to those tunnels, it would explain how he could disappear and reappear at will. But why? What was his motive? Marcus tapped his pen against the table, deep in thought. Maybe he saw something in the hikers, something that reminded him of whatever ghost he's chasing. With renewed focus, they set out to learn more about Henry. Interviews with the few family members willing to talk painted a picture of a man fascinated by the wilderness, someone who would disappear for weeks at a time only to return with tales of hidden places and forgotten paths. Pamela felt a chill as she listened to the stories. It's almost like he was searching for something or someone out there. The investigation took a significant turn when they discovered an old journal tucked away in the attic of the Granger family estate. Its pages were filled with entries detailing Henry's explorations of the Appalachian backcountry, cryptic references to the old ways, and maps marked with secret locations. Marcus's eyes widened as he traced the lines on the map. This is it. This is how he moved around, these tunnels and paths. They aren't just random, they're a network. Pamela felt a shiver of anticipation. We need to follow this map. If we're right, it could lead us to the answers we've been searching for. As they prepared for their journey into the heart of the mountains, the pieces began to align. The Granger family's secrets, the hiker's disappearance, and Henry's ghostly presence all converged toward a revelation that was as terrifying as it was inevitable. The mountains stood silent, as if holding their breath, waiting for the moment when the truth would finally emerge from the shadows. The next step was clear, and with each passing hour the figure of the killer grew sharper against the mist. The journey was far from over, but the end was finally in sight. The team set out at dawn, the chill of the mountain air biting at their skin. Marcus and Pamela, accompanied by a small crew of seasoned trackers, followed Henry's map with a mixture of trepidation and determination. Each step felt heavy with the weight of impending discovery. The sun had barely crested the horizon when they reached the first marked location, a seemingly innocuous clearing deep in the woods. As they surveyed the area, Pamela noticed a series of stone markers barely visible beneath a thick layer of fallen leaves. She crouched to brush them clean, her fingers tracing the worn carvings. "This must be one of the sites Henry mentioned in his journal," she whispered, the words hanging in the crisp morning air. Marcus nodded, consulting the map. "And if we're right, there's a network of these sites all leading to something he was obsessed with." The team pressed on, moving deeper into the labyrinthine woods. Each site they uncovered hinted at a hidden history, a tapestry woven from the threads of the past. They found remnants of old camps, forgotten tools, and at one location, a weathered photograph pinned beneath a stone. It showed a much younger Henry, standing proudly beside a group of men, their faces obscured by time. Pamela examined the photograph, a sense of unease settling over her. He wasn't alone in this, she murmured, a cold realization dawning. He had help, or at least he wasn't the first. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows between the trees, they arrived at the final marker on the map. A cave mouth yawned before them, its depths hidden in darkness. The air was thick with the scent of earth and secrets long buried. Marcus turned to the team, his voice steady but urgent. "This is it. Whatever answers we're looking for, they're in there." Inside the cave, the air was cool and oppressive. Flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing walls etched with symbols and words in a language neither Marcus nor Pamela recognized. As they ventured further, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber, its center dominated by a stone altar. Pamela's flashlight caught something glinting beneath a pile of rocks. She knelt, her heart pounding as she uncovered a rusted metal box. Inside, she found a collection of documents, yellowed with age but still legible. Among them was a ledger, filled with names and dates, each entry meticulously recorded. Her breath caught as she recognized some of the names, those of the missing hikers. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, his face pale in the dim light. This is the link. This is how he chose them. The realization hit them both like a physical blow. The network of tunnels, the ancient rites, it was all part of a ritual, a twisted legacy passed down through generations. And Henry was merely the latest in a line of guardians, tasked with preserving a dark tradition. The oppressive silence of the cave seemed to close in around them, the weight of their discovery almost unbearable. But beneath that silence, a new understanding emerged, a path leading straight to the heart of the mystery. Pamela looked at Marcus, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "We need to get this to the authorities. This changes everything." As they retraced their steps back to the world above, the enormity of what they had uncovered settled over them, a revelation that promised to shatter the case wide open and expose the killer hiding in plain sight. The morning light was just breaking as Marcus and Pamela emerged from the cave, their minds still reeling from the gravity of their find. They hurried down the trail, their resolve hardening with each step. This was more than just a breakthrough. It was the key to unraveling the mystery that had plagued them for so long. In town, whispers of the hiker's disappearance had long since faded, replaced by the routine of daily life. But as Marcus and Pamela approached the sheriff's office, the weight of the documents in their hands seemed to pulse with urgency. This was no ordinary case. The ledger named names that would shake the very foundations of the community. Inside, Sheriff Thompson, a man whose reputation for diligence was matched only by his compassion for the victims' families, looked up from his desk. The sight of Marcus and Pamela, their faces etched with a mix of determination and exhaustion, told him this wasn't a mere update. Marcus laid the rusted box on the desk, the documents spilling out like a Pandora's box of horrors. As Thompson sifted through the papers, his expression shifted from disbelief to grim understanding. There was no denying the evidence. The ledger was a map, a twisted guide to a legacy of darkness hidden beneath the town's surface. The sheriff's voice was steady but tinged with disbelief. "Whoever's behind this, they've been right under our noses." Pamela nodded, her voice unwavering. "It's Henry. He's the guardian of this ritual, the one who chose them." Henry, the town's unassuming librarian, had been a fixture in the community for decades. With his gentle demeanor and quiet presence, he was often overlooked, a background character in the tapestry of small-town life. Yet the ledger revealed a chilling duality. A man who meticulously curated a public facade while privately maintaining a dark tradition. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Sheriff Thompson coordinated with his team, a sense of urgency propelling them into action. They moved swiftly, securing a warrant and preparing to confront the man who had eluded them for so long. At the library, Henry was at his usual post, shelving books with meticulous care. His calm exterior belied the storm brewing outside, a storm that was about to crash down upon him. The officers approached with caution, their presence a stark contrast to the quiet of the library. Henry looked up, his eyes meeting theirs with a flicker of recognition. For a moment the facade held, until the evidence was laid bare before him, the ledger turning the weight of history against him. The arrest was swift, the community's shock palpable as news spread. The once overlooked librarian was unmasked, his hidden life laid bare for all to see. As he was led away, murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd, the betrayal cutting deep. Back at the sheriff's office, the documents were meticulously catalogued, each entry a testament to the years of horror hidden in plain sight. Pamela and Marcus watched as the pieces finally came together, their journey nearing its end. Yet as satisfying as the arrest was, it raised new questions. Why had Henry continued the ritual? What drove him to perpetuate the darkness that had claimed so many lives? As the town grappled with these revelations, Marcus and Pamela knew their work was far from over. The ledger was just the beginning, a doorway into understanding the true scope of what had been uncovered. The community was left to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the monster revealed. And as Henry sat in his cell, the weight of his choices bearing down on him, the question lingered. What would he reveal once he started talking? In the dim confines of the interrogation room, Henry sat alone, the blank walls around him a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in his mind. The burden of his secrets had finally caught up to him, and there was no more running. Moments later, Sheriff Thompson entered, his demeanor calm but resolute, a silent promise of justice in his eyes. Henry, his hands clasped tightly on the table, looked up as the sheriff took a seat across from him. The air was heavy with anticipation, every second stretching into eternity. Finally, the sheriff broke the silence, his voice steady but probing. "Henry, the evidence is overwhelming. The ledger tells a story we never imagined. It's time to tell yours." For a moment, Henry hesitated, as if weighing his options. But deep down, he knew the time for deception had passed. He took a deep breath, the fight leaving him, and began to speak, his words halting at first but gaining momentum as the truth spilled out. "I never wanted it to go this far," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "It started as a fascination, a way to feel in control, but it spiraled and I lost myself." As he spoke, the room seemed to close in, the weight of his admissions heavy in the air. He described meticulous plans and cold calculations, each decision a step deeper into darkness. The hiking group, he revealed, had been chosen for their innocence, their excitement about the journey making them easy targets. Across town, news of Henry's confession spread like wildfire. The trial was swift, the evidence incontrovertible. The community gathered outside the courthouse, seeking closure, their grief mingling with anger and disbelief. In the courtroom, Henry faced the families of his victims, their eyes burning with unanswered questions. The judge's voice rang out, clear and unwavering, as the sentence was delivered: life without parole, a fate fitting the gravity of his crimes. Yet even as justice was served, the scars remained. The families struggled to rebuild, their lives forever altered by the loss of their loved ones. For Pamela and Marcus, the case's resolution marked the end of a long and arduous journey, but the beginning of a new chapter, one of healing and remembrance. The community, once shattered, slowly began to heal, their resilience a testament to the power of unity in the face of tragedy. And as the leaves turned and seasons changed, they honored the memories of those lost, their legacy living on in the stories shared and the steps taken to prevent such horrors from happening again. In the end, the case was more than just a story of justice. It was a reminder of the fragility of life, the importance of vigilance, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the sun set over the Appalachians, casting long shadows over the land, the memory of the hiking group lingered, a poignant reminder of journeys never completed and lives forever changed.